Okay, the timeline. People have been asking me about it. I've been thinking about it. Before I start, there's two other videos you need to watch on this. One is Little Girl Attorneys. I think she published it today about how these are not facts. This is not proof. This is Wayfarer's side of the story through Wayfarer's eyes. And so we just have to take it with a grain of salt. So go watch that. Also, go watch Alicia's video. I will tag her below. She's such a great industry insider. She helps unravel some of this jargon. And I had asked her specifically about the security badges with the names on them. I think a bunch of people did, and she did a video on that. So go watch Alicia's video as well, because that's really helpful. And I feel like as we get into some of these things about like the color of the script and what that means about timing, I think that kind of stuff gets really interesting. But go watch Little Girl Attorney and go watch Alicia. So it's funny. I was literally the very first thing I wrote down about this is Wayfarer's side of the story only, exclamation point. So Little Girl Attorney has already covered that. She did a much better and more comprehensive job than I did. But I just want to reiterate, again, this is just their side of the story. Now, putting together a timeline is good practice. I have trained most of my clients to do it. This is something that really good HR professionals will do. My favorite thing is when someone calls me and they're like, hey, we've got a problem. We think we're going to have to fire somebody. I'm about to email you a 3-page timeline. I'm like, yes. So it's a good practice to have. I don't know what prompted this. I'm sure somebody answered it in their deposition, but it's a nice thing to have. But of course, it is only one side of the story, and it is not only their side of the story, it's their characterizations, it's their descriptions, it's their adjectives. So you have to take it with a grain of salt. But I think what I realized in looking through it, and I haven't delved really deep into a lot of the stuff that was attached to the complaint and the dates and all of that on purpose, because I wanted to focus on the law. And I knew that just because some of this stuff was named in the complaint doesn't mean it was ultimately going to be evidence. And so now I'm starting to look a little bit more at these actual timelines of when things happened and what artifacts there are of those things. And I think actually what this is helping me do is figure out what I want to see from Lively's response to the motion for summary judgment to fill in the gaps. So one of the things that sticks out to me when you're looking at the order of events like this is that meeting early on where Ryan dressed Baldoni down about asking the trainer about how much Lively weighed. So, I knew that happened early on. I don't think I realized until this timeline, if this turns out to be accurate, that all happened in pre-production. That happened in April of 2023. So before principal photography had even begun, Baldoni asks Lively's trainer, how much does she weigh? That got back to her. That got back to Ryan. Ryan let Baldoni have it in some way, shape, or form. I don't know if it was yelling or not. But he basically said, like, how dare you? And that's interesting to me because that means that the story from Lively is he asked this question about how much she weighed, not even to her, to a third party. And that got him the riot act being read to him by one of the most powerful people in the industry that he works in. And so his reaction to that was, I'll sexually harass her when she comes on set? Now, I'm not saying it's impossible, but like, if I were him and that happened to me, I'd be like, I'm only going to talk to that woman when I'm scared. I'm not going anywhere near her. I'm scared of that guy. I'm sure as hell not going to get anywhere near his wife. Right? So I think that's interesting to me. Okay, then we get into principal photography and all of the things that she claimed happened that are the basis for her sexual harassment complaint. And they had this meeting on June 1st where everybody came together and she was like, here's all the stuff I'm upset about. Hold on, let me make it bigger. Okay, so they have this meeting and she's like, okay, here are the things, according to this, assuming this bears out. The sexy comment, the birthing scene, don't cry. Jamie looking her in the eye, the hugging, and then some other stuff, right? So this happens on June 1st. What this doesn't tell us, and what I'm hoping Lively's motion will address, is how did that meeting end? What was the reaction to that meeting? Because how that meeting ended and what the reaction was to that meeting and what the steps were supposed to be after that meeting kind of determines the rest of the situation. Because we know that after this meeting happened, very soon thereafter, production shut down. And we didn't hear about any of this stuff again until November, when Lively's lawyer sent the 17-point list over to Wayfair and said she's not coming back unless you do this stuff. So one of the pieces that we've been missing all of this time is what happened here. How did Wayfair take it? What did they say? You know, the Lively people say you should have known in that room right then that those were sexual harassment complaints and you should have investigated. I want to know exactly what was said. I want to know what their impression was. How did you hear it? I want to know what they said they would and wouldn't do. I want to know if they left and she said, okay, I feel better. This is all done. Or, okay, I'm leaving. I hope you guys deal with this. Like, what happened at the end of this? So that is one of the main things I'm looking to see from Lively. Okay. Sorry, the Ohio State game. Everyone's very excited at my house. OH. So then you go straight from that meeting. Okay, again, I want to see if there's stuff Lively is going to fill in here. Because the only thing that really is here on the Wayfarer side is Baldoni texts her on August the 8th and says, hey, it's my last day in the edit. It looks pretty good, by the way. Happy birthday. And then on November 9th is when the 17-point list comes out and says she's not coming back unless you do all this stuff. So critical to the idea of what everybody thought was going to happen, whether her claim rose to the level of sexual harassment, whether there was an obligation to investigate, et cetera, depends on what happened between those two times. And Wayfair is not telling us anything that happened between those two times except for this text. So I'm interested in hearing what the Lively people have to say. Then, of course, we have the 17-point list. And this is the part where, if this bears out in the evidence, I think the Wayfarer party's characterization of what happened when shooting restarted starts to make sense. But again, I'm waiting for Lively to show us her side of the story. So they send the 17-point list. We've all seen it. They try to push back. She says, this isn't a negotiation. Sign it or she's not coming back. They bend over. They're like, all right, we'll sign it. They don't want to do it, but they decide to do it. And I assume at that point that they think this is all done, right? Whatever issues she had raised in June, whatever issues she has raised now, we signed the document she told us to sign. We've agreed to do the things she wants us to do. We've done everything she's asked for. She said she wants to do this in lieu of any kind of HR process. We feel like we've done everything there is to do here. Now, the 17-point list does say we're going to have an all-hands meeting, which I guess becomes an all-hands. I guess all hands would be like on the set. But then there's also this meeting of sort of the core group on January 4th, where, according to the testimony of Heath and Baldoni, Reynolds proceeds to scream at them for 5 to 6 hours about all the things that they've done. So as a lawyer, the question is, why is he still screaming at them if everything has been resolved? There's no allegation. One of the things I've been waiting for is whether there's an allegation of sexual harassment or inappropriate discriminatory behavior after May, like right before November. And again, I'm waiting from Lively. Maybe there's something in there that I don't know about, but I have not heard anything. So we are still in January of 24 talking about things that happened in May. And in between that is a document that we all agree to that changes the terms and conditions of her employment and forgoes any HR process. So why are we screaming at people still in January? And I think the answer to that for the Wayfarer people is the timeline in January starts to match up with the script revisions, getting into the editing bay and stuff like that. So I want to see Lively's input here. I want to see what she fills in these holes with, because this is sort of the only pieces missing.